Podcast, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to robot facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The Bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome back to the Bullvine Podcast, where we cut through dairy industry noise to get you the insights that actually matter for your operation.
And today we're diving deep into a feature piece that's been generating some serious buzz across the industry. We are talking about Decide or Decline, 2025 and the future of mid-sized dairies. This is really one of those articles that delivers the cold, hard truth. It's got layers of data, and some surprises that are probably going to make farmers rethink their entire approach to the coming year.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this immediately. The core message is, well, it's brutal, but pretty necessary for survival. 2025 demands absolute clarity and commitment. And we're talking specifically about the farms that, for decades really represented the industry standard, those 700 to 1,200 cow operations. They were kind of the benchmark, the innovators, the stability in the middle.
But that middle it's kind of evaporated, hasn't it? And here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. We aren't just talking about cost pressures, though those are huge. We're talking about strategic direction. The sources we looked at detail 3 viable, proven paths forward for success. But the single biggest, most immediate threat to this group, it's indecision. They're telling farmers in that middle range exactly what they need to hear, and maybe more importantly, what habits they need to stop, like right now.
Exactly. Let's set the context and the stakes here, because we really need to understand the magnitude of this squeeze. Historically, the mid-sized farm was the backbone of our milk supply, known for adaptability, strong family involvement. But the ground has fundamentally shifted, and this group is now facing, probably the steepest climb of all.
Yeah, the squeeze. It's defined by a perfect storm of external pressures. It makes the challenge directional, not just economic. Think about the last couple of years. Rising input costs that haven't really backed off, the chronic tightening of the labor market, new regulations demanding serious capital outlay, and critically, those rising interest rates that have, quadrupled the cost of servicing debt or financing new stuff.
It just changes the whole definition of sustainability for this specific group, doesn't it? If you're running a 900-cow operation, you've likely inherited a cost structure designed for a completely different economic era. And that structure is now, frankly, becoming fatally inefficient against the competition at either end.
And the stakes just couldn't be higher. We're not dealing with theories here, like slow attrition or something. We have stark, pretty alarming data. Roughly 2,800 U.S. dairies closed in 2024. And the sources confirm the overwhelming majority of those operations fell squarely into that squeezed 700 to 1,200 cow range. This is, it sounds dramatic, but it's like an extinction-level event for the middle if they don't fundamentally change their operational model now.
That is the reality check we all need. But let's tease the controversy right away, because the sources didn't just study the failures, right? They studied the survivors, the ones who successfully navigated 2024 and are actually positioned for 2025. And they shared a common sort of non-negotiable thread: ironclad financial clarity.
That's right. The data points specifically to successful dairies having debt ratios under 30%, not 40, not 50, under 30. This isn't just like a nice recommendation. It's basically the entry requirement for survival now.
Yeah, I want every listener to pause right here, maybe pull over if you have to, and ask yourself that critical question. Do you know your leverage point, your debt to asset ratio specifically? Because the source material is crystal clear. Knowing your financial limits, especially that debt ratio, dictates which of the 3 paths you're even eligible to consider. If you're already over-leveraged, options like Path 1 expansion, they're probably off the table immediately.
Absolutely. That financial foundation is just critical because the data clearly shows how the 2 extremes of the industry are winning and why the middle is inherently disadvantaged right now.
Okay, let's jump straight into the numbers that define the problem. We used USDA and Cornell data to analyze the 2 forces really squeezing the middle. So on the large end, farms milking over 2,000 cows now produce over 50% of the U.S. milk supply. But what's crucial isn't just their size, it's their efficiency advantage. They operate, on average, 20-25% more efficiently than these mid-sized commercial herds.
Wait, hold on. That 20 to 25%, that's everything, isn't it? If I'm running a 900 cow operation, that efficiency gap is basically my entire potential margin gone. I am inherently starting the day almost a quarter of the way behind the neighbor who just hit 3,000 cows. That's a massive structural headwind that just isn't going away.
It is brutal. And it forces that question, how does that 900 cow producer bridge that gap without, adding 1,500 cows overnight? Because they can't just decide to magically cut 25% of their feed or labor costs tomorrow. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly. You just can't compete on pure volume against that kind of scale advantage. And that's why the middle gets squeezed from the other side, too.
Precisely. So the Cornell Dairy Markets data shows that farms under 500 cows, they're succeeding through rigorous specialization in niche markets. Think organic, grass-fed, hyperlocal marketing models. They aren't focused on volume at all. They're capturing price premiums, often earning 30-60% above commodity prices because they found a differentiated revenue stream that commands real consumer loyalty.
So the mid-size farm is really stuck in the worst possible spot, losing on volume efficiency to the big guys and stuck in the volatile commodity rut without the price premiums of the niche guys. It's like they have the complexity and overhead of a large business, but without the efficiency advantage. And they lack the simplicity and sort of local connection of a smaller, specialized farm.
That is the central implication, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the data shows how this implication differs depending on where you sit within that mid-size band. It's not uniform.
Right. Let's break that down a bit. If you're a smaller mid-size operation, say 750 cows, and you try to just hold steady, well, the efficiency loss is magnified because you still carry the cost of significant infrastructure, a decent parlor, maybe 2 full-time feeders, but you don't have the cow volume to really dilute that fixed cost properly across enough units of production.
Yeah. And conversely, if you're a larger mid-size operation, maybe 1,150 cows, you're equally squeezed. Because you have nearly all the labor and infrastructure costs of a large farm, you probably have a full management team, higher regulatory overhead, but you still lack that necessary 20-25% efficiency edge needed to truly compete with the 2,500 cow operations.
Yeah.
So the efficiency loss is magnified whether you choose to expand passively or contract passively. It bites either way if you're static.
It just forces a strategic, defined decision. The luxury of standing still, it's just over. Which brings us nicely to the 3 viable paths the source material identified for survival and hopefully success in 2025.
Okay, path 1 is expansion with intention. And this is where we really need to challenge that conventional wisdom that just adding more cows fixes all problems, because it doesn't. This strategy, according to the sources, only really works in specific supportive regions. We're talking primarily Idaho, Texas, parts of the Southern Plains, places where you have reasonable land values, access to water, and importantly, processors actively adding demand and capacity.
Yeah, the Idaho Dairymen's Association reports, I think, milk production up 3% year over year, mostly driven by mid-size operations successfully expanding to that 2,000 to 2,500 cow scale. Now, that sounds great on paper, but I'm skeptical. Everyone talks expansion. But what are the real requirements beyond cheap land and willing banks? We all know the farm down the road that expanded too fast and, well, ended up collapsing. Expansion can just be a faster path to bankruptcy if the groundwork isn't laid meticulously right.
Absolutely. That's why the sources emphasize that sentimentality just doesn't cut it. They detail 3 core strengths common to successful expansion projects, and they are primarily financial and managerial, not just operational.
Okay, let's hear them. The 3 core strengths that differentiate success from potentially disastrous failure in this expansion strategy.
First, debt ratios must be under 35% before you even think about starting the expansion project. You have to leverage only where cash flow already proves out the model. If you're already pushing that leverage boundary before you break ground, the project is fundamentally flawed from the start. Too risky.
Hold on, a 35% debt ratio? That sounds extremely aggressive for a capital expansion project that could easily cost millions. What happens if interest rates move another point or two during construction? How does the source account for that very real risk?
It's a great point. They account for it by stressing cash flow modeling, not just asset valuation. The successful operators weren't just looking at the balance sheet, they were running rigorous stress tests, showing profitability even with interest rates maybe 200 basis points higher than current rates. It's about building a fortress balance sheet first, then scaling from strength.
Okay, that's a practical and frankly necessary distinction. Financial resilience first. What's the second strength? Second, trained management teams. Scaling up from, say, 900 to 2,500 cows is a completely different business model. It's not just more of the same. The best expansions, according to the analysis, pair dedicated family ownership with experienced outside managers. You need that external, objective expertise to run a system that's fundamentally different from a hands-on 900-cow farm.
Yeah.
Your role shifts, from being the main operator to being more like a CEO who manages managers. If you don't have that management depth ready to go, the increased scale will likely crush you.
That's the management paradox of expansion, isn't it?
Yeah.
You multiply your challenges, your potential points of failure, faster than your output if you don't have the human capital in place first. And the third core strength, which is increasingly critical, nutrient management foresight. When you expand to that scale, you face intense public scrutiny and much higher regulatory thresholds. Planning for robust nutrient management, whether that's digesters, advanced separation, securing enough acreage agreements, that has to happen before construction begins. It protects your future flexibility and prevents regulatory nightmares from derailing the whole operation later on, probably when you're most financially vulnerable.
Right. I remember the source brought in the magnification principle here, and it's so critical. They quoted a veteran Idaho producer who said, "Scale magnifies everything, your efficiency and your inefficiency."
Let's talk about that inefficiency for a second.
Yeah.
If your protocols for, say, mastitis treatment or parlor sanitation are a bit sloppy now at 900 cows, that same sloppy protocol, magnified across 2,500 cows in a higher throughput parlor, that can easily become a $250,000 annual loss. Just from dumped milk, wasted antibiotics, slower throughput, little leaks become big floods.
And that's why the source notes that while you might achieve labor efficiency gains, maybe 25-35% in new systems, that only actually materializes if the training and the cow flow system design happen before construction. If you build a shiny new double 30 parlor and then try to figure out the cow flow or train the staff on the fly, well, you've just magnified your initial operational chaos into a massive ongoing financial drag.
Exactly. So expansion doesn't magically create efficiency. It simply reveals and amplifies the efficiency or the disastrous lack thereof that was already built into your business plan and your management discipline. It has to be ruthless, financially disciplined expansion, primarily viable out west.
Okay, so that's path one. Focused expansion. Now let's pivot to the rest of the industry, particularly places like the Northeast and the Upper Great Lakes, where high land values and limited resources mean that kind of large-scale expansion just isn't a realistic option for most.
Right, that brings us to path two, right sizing and smarter technology. This is the primary alternative for regions like the Northeast, the Upper Great Lakes, and also Atlantic Canada. The high cost of land and population density fundamentally limit massive growth, so the focus shifts entirely to maximizing performance over scale. Quality over quantity, basically.
Technology leveling the field. I like that phrase because, technology used to be something only the really large farms could afford to deploy effectively. What's changed there?
Well, it's shifted from primarily being about data collection, although that's still important, to more about labor replacement and precision management, especially feeding and health monitoring. And we have some compelling data from the University of Vermont Extension's 2024 robotic dairy study. They looked specifically at herds between 400 and 600 cows, right in the smaller end of our target group here. And they found these herds reduced their labor cost by about 30% while maintaining, or in some cases, even improving milk yield per cow after opting robotics.
Okay, 30% labor reduction is massive, no doubt. But let's translate that. In plain English, for the farmer listening who might still be milking in a tie stall or maybe a small flat parlor, this isn't really about the job being easier, is it? It's about completely re-engineering work. That 30% labor reduction means you're probably moving 500 from, say, 5 full-time employees down to maybe 2 or 3 highly skilled technicians. People focus purely on maintenance, repro, and health analysis, and the capital expenditure for robotics is huge. Does the source outline the managerial capacity shift needed for this? Or is it just talking tech specs?
No, the source is emphatic on the managerial shift. It points out that Path 2 absolutely requires the farmer or the key manager to become a high-level data analyst and a machine supervisor. The time saved isn't suddenly time off golfing. It's time reallocated to analyzing the 20-plus data points per cow per day the robots generate. This allows for that precision-feeding, timely health interventions, the things that ultimately drive profitability in a high-cost environment.
And this holds true even where prices are somewhat buffered, right? Like up in Canada with their supply management system. Does efficiency still matter as much?
Absolutely. The source confirms this strategy holds true in Ontario and Quebec too. Producers there are maximizing returns per kilogram of quota, specifically using automation and robotics. As one Ontario nutritionist apparently remarked, efficiency isn't negotiable just because prices are stable. It's the only real lever left. They're optimizing the massive capital they've sunk into their quota by maximizing productivity per unit of that allocation.
That is a phenomenal insight, actually. You're not just relying on the commodity price, you're maximizing the productivity of the single most expensive asset you own, your quota, or maybe your high-value land base. That fundamentally changes your capital investment logic, doesn't it?
Completely. And the success stories bear this out. There's a case study mentioned of a Vermont dairy. They converted to organic and installed robotic milking simultaneously. Big move. They immediately saw their milk price climb right in line with national organic averages, landing around $31.50 per hundredweight. But the really critical part, the owner said, was the culture shift. The streamlined routines meant the owners and key managers could dedicate that freed up, say, 30% extra time directly to genetics, maximizing forage quality, enhancing cow health protocols, the specific levers that drive margin in a specialty market like organic.
So Path to Success really hinges on a complete reengineering of workflows and also the capital investment logic. It's about becoming a precision-based farm, using technology to enable high-margin specialization, rather than just trying to be a smaller version of a large commodity operation. It's a different mindset.
Okay, let's move to Path 3 then. This one is gaining serious traction, particularly in the commodity-heavy regions like Wisconsin, Minnesota, and also parts of eastern Canada. Path 3 is optimization over expansion. This is all about refining the economics within your existing boundaries, maximizing every single dollar of margin before you even think about adding a single cow or a major piece of iron.
Right. This is where we follow the money through just ruthless attention to detail. I know many farmers, particularly in the heartland, who are doing this brilliantly. They aren't expanding the footprint at all. They're expanding the margin with extreme management discipline.
Exactly. And we have specific benchmarking data from the sources on the impact. Farms that implemented these strict optimization strategies, they lifted their income over feed cost, the IOFC, from the regional average, which was around $7.50, up to $10 per cow per day.
Whoa, hold on. A $2.50 per cow per day increase in IOFC. Let's put that in perspective. In a 900 cow herd, that captured roughly $820,000 more annual margin. That's staggering. Tell me, how does that $2.50 break down? It can't just be one magic bullet, surely.
No, it's definitely not one thing. It's discipline applied across the board. The sources broke down that $2.50 increase into specific mechanisms, and it demonstrates that these gains didn't come from some spectacular, expensive new innovation. They came from fundamental, frankly unsexy, operational consistency, just doing the basics exceptionally well.
Okay, give us the details. What were they actually doing day to day?
All right, so roughly a $1 of that $2.50 gain came from tighter TMR consistency and feed bunk management. That means ensuring the ration delivered is exactly what the nutritionist designed, preventing sorting, maximizing feed efficiency. They were measuring TMR consistency like 3 times a week, not just once a month when the nutritionist showed up. Constant monitoring.
That makes total sense. Okay, the second biggest source of margin gain often relates to cow comfort and access, right? Minimizing stress.
Precisely. Another $1.75 of the gain came from enhanced cow flow and parlor scheduling, minimizing time away from feed and rest, and also better feed push-up frequency, ensuring access to fresh feed 24/7. Stress costs you yield, consistency pays. It's that simple, but hard to execute day in, day out.
Okay, so that's $1.75 a ton accounted for. What about the rest? Got to be repro.
You nailed it. The final $1.75 came from enhanced reproductive consistency. Reducing days open, getting cows bred back efficiently, using better heat detection or synchronization protocols. This is just pure management discipline applied ruthlessly to the basics. It's about building predictable profit from predictable performance, not chasing rainbows.
Yeah, this is really about making every single cow count and making sure every input dollar is generating the maximum possible return. It's like you said, the professionalization of parity. It's a fundamental shift from expansion thinking to business refinement thinking.
And their revenue stream reflected this refined focus too. These optimized farms focused heavily on component value. Consistent butterfat performance above 4.0% was earning them premiums of mid-$1.50 to $1.75 at wheat. When you're producing commodity milk, those seemingly small premiums can define whether you sink or swim in tight years. They add up fast.
And we absolutely have to talk about revenue diversification here, specifically the strategic use of beef on dairy genetics. This is becoming a real game changer for mid-size optimization strategies. The University of Wisconsin Dairy Research from 2025, cited in the source, shows this strategy adding $350–400 per calf compared to selling a straight dairy bull calf. That's significant cash flow.
It is a significant and, importantly, a relatively reliable second stream of income that helps stabilize the bottom line. And it does it without the farmer having to incur the massive capital costs of adding a new herd or a new parlor. Plus, it allows them to be extremely selective in their replacement heifer selection, right? Which, over time, improves the genetic potential and performance of the remaining dairy herd. Win-win.
So, okay, we have 3 distinct successful paths identified: ruthless scale, precision tech specialization, or fundamentals optimization. All 3 work brilliantly, according to the data. But you absolutely have to choose one lane and commit fully, because trying to stand between lanes, doing a bit of everything, that seems to be fatal in this environment.
And that commitment must also be regionally authentic.
Yeah.
This was a huge takeaway from the source material. They stressed that just copy-pasting a plan from across the border or even just across the state line is a big mistake. Geography really dictates strategy.
Yeah, like in the West Idaho, Texas, places like that. The climate, the vast land availability, the infrastructure capacity. It naturally favors path 1, efficiency, scale, throughput. If you're not built for scale out there, you are inherently disadvantaged. It's just the reality.
Whereas in the Midwest and Ontario, you have these established cooperative structures, highly developed component pricing systems. They heavily reward consistency and quality. That makes path 3 optimization often the most risk-managed and rewarding option there. Play to the strengths of the system.
And then finally, you look at the Northeast and Quebec. Locality, transparency, sustainability. These things really drive brand value and consumer perception there. That directly supports Path 2 smarter technology and right-sizing and allows for those critical premium pricing models, whether it's organic, grass-fed, or just a strong local brand. The economics and the culture sort of demand regional authenticity in your strategic choice. You can't just import a Texas model to Vermont and expect it to work.
Okay, let's talk about the lessons learned from the painful transition periods, because every successful evolution comes with scars, right? And we need to be realistic about the capital cushion required to get through those transitions.
Yeah, these scars are where the practical reality really hits the theoretical plan hard. The source material gave that stark example of the Midwestern family who decided to downsize from 850 cows to 500 after installing robots. Big strategic shift. They saw their production drop nearly 15% for an entire year.
That 15% drop is not just a blip on the radar. That's a potential cash flow crisis. And the drop occurred because both the cows and the staff had to adapt to the new, highly technical workflow. It takes time. They recovered eventually, but that kind of transition requires immense patience and critically strong lender trust. They apparently had to restructure their operating line and provide monthly stress reports to their banker detailing exactly how they were going to bridge that year-long revenue gap. Nerve-wracking stuff.
And on the expansion side, Path 1, the source noted that in Idaho, several planned expansions actually paused midway through construction. Why? Because the recent jump in interest costs bit deeply into their construction financing, significantly exceeding their initial estimates. Those producers who successfully navigated it had one key thing in common. They went into the project with an extra contingency fund, often 15-20% above the initial hard construction cost estimate. That cushion allowed them to absorb the higher interest rates without stopping work and jeopardizing the whole project.
That common thread in both cases is clear. Capital cushion and time. Transition phases nearly always take longer and cost more than projected on paper. If you are starting a transition, any of these 3 paths, with already thin margins and high debt, you are, frankly, setting yourself up for an avoidable failure. You need breathing room.
Which brings us right back to the most dangerous move of all in 2025, standing still. I hear it all the time from producers, we thought doing nothing was the safe move. We'll just wait until the milk market settles down or maybe rates fall back.
That sentiment, however emotionally understandable it might be, is financially fatal today. The Compere Financial Producer Insights 2024 report was explicit about this. It warned that dairies without defined 5-year plans, the ones who essentially chose to wait and see, lost, on average, 6-8% of their equity annually.
Yeah, and let's detail what that equity loss actually looks like on the ground. This wasn't just market fluctuation affecting asset values. It was real operational decay. It was due to deferred maintenance on equipment that then breaks down more frequently, costing uptime and repair bills. It was a failure to update genetics, falling behind competitors. And maybe most damagingly, losing high-quality, reliable staff to competitors who did invest in better, more efficient systems and more predictable scheduling.
The slow leak was killing them. It's not like an acute crisis where something blows up. It's death by 1,000 cuts when you choose to just stand still in such a rapidly changing environment.
This really is the core paradox of 2025, isn't it? The biggest risk today is actually indecision. Waiting today is fundamentally different than waiting was, say, a decade ago. We have higher structural interest rates, much faster technology turnover cycles, and consumer preferences shifting in real time that favor specialized products. The longer a farm hesitates, the more expensive adaptation becomes, and the wider that 20-25% efficiency gap gets compared to the leaders.
As one Quebec producer put it really powerfully, at the 2025 Canadian Dairy Expo, they said, "You can borrow money for cows, not for uncertainty. Clarity allows you to access capital. Uncertainty just locks it down. Banks hate uncertainty."
And that Idaho producer who successfully navigated the expansion, he summed up the risk perfectly, contrasting his move with the pain some of his neighbors were feeling. The biggest gamble we took wasn't adding the new barn. The biggest gamble was the 3 years we spent standing still before we decided to do it. That lost time was the real cost.
Wow, yeah. When the dust settles on 2025, we might remember it less for the milk price swings and more for the critical management decisions that were made or not made this year. It really is about clarity, not just capacity anymore. All right, let's bring this all home then. Our listener just finished morning milking. Maybe they're driving to the feed store right now, thinking through this challenge for their own operation. Based on that habits of survivors section in the analysis, what are the 3 definitive, actionable things they need to know from this discussion? What are the immediate, medium, and long-term actionable insights they should be focusing on?
Okay, insight 1, immediate action. This needs to happen this week. Get ironclad financial clarity and start measuring like a business, not just a tradition. You absolutely need to verify that debt ratio, know it precisely, and aim for under 30%. And ensure you have at least 3 months of operating cash reserves readily available. Liquidity is king right now. And crucially, scrutinize every single capital expenditure. Justify all equipment and facility upgrades only by measurable, quantifiable efficiency gains. If it doesn't demonstrably improve your IOFC or reduce your labor costs per hundredweight, you should probably hold off for now. Be ruthless.
That financial rigor sets the absolutely essential foundation. Okay, now for the medium term, say the next 3 to 6 months, this is crucial for strategic positioning, right?
Insight 2. Choose a lane expansion, optimization, or specialization tech, and commit fully to the strategic planning required for that lane. Don't waffle. If you choose optimization, path 3, you must implement rigorous IOFC tracking daily, or at least weekly, focusing relentlessly on TMR consistency and butterfat performance. These are the marginal gains that deliver massive, predictable results over time. If you choose specialization with tech, path 2, you have to begin developing a detailed capital investment logic. It needs to specifically detail the projected labor savings, the expected yield improvement, the payback period before you even submit the loan application. You need a bulletproof transition plan, not just a purchase order for robots.
Right, homework first. And finally, the long-term positioning, looking out over the next 1 to 2 years. How do they build lasting stability and maybe legacy into the operation?
Insight 3. Build stability through diversification and transparency. Implement revenue diversification. This is becoming almost non-negotiable for stability in volatile markets. Beef on dairy genetics is the key proven option right now that stabilizes calf income with relatively low capital outlay. But custom field work or seriously exploring manure digesters, depending on your region and resources, are others to explore. Find a second income stream. And finally, ensure generational transparency by starting succession planning now, even if it feels early. The sources showed farms with these plans already in motion simply make faster, cleaner business decisions because everyone has agreed on the future direction and the acceptable level of risk. It avoids paralysis later.
That really is the ultimate takeaway, isn't it? The shift facing mid-sized dairies isn't fundamentally about capacity. It's about achieving clarity in the midst of all this uncertainty. Clarity first, then action.
Absolutely. This has been another essential deep dive from the Bullvine Podcast. If this kind of rigorous, no-nonsense analysis helps you bring clarity to your operation, definitely head over to www.thebullvine.com. There are more articles there that tell you what's really happening in dairy. We really aim to bring you that no BS industry analysis you need to navigate the challenging years ahead.
And seriously, subscribe wherever you get your deep dives. We're releasing episodes twice weekly now, covering different critical topics. And trust me, you really don't want to miss what we've got coming next week. We're tackling the hidden cost of heifer rearing and why industry averages are probably lying to you. We're going deep into the financial black hole that replacement stock can become and how the most successful farms are managing that cost effectively. It's a big one. See you next time.